On today's show, we finally got our answer on John Klingberg. Surgery it is. What does this mean for the Leafs moving forward? And we got a game tonight. Leafs boogie up north for another Battle of Ontario. We'll preview the matchup to get you set for tonight. All that more coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. This episode is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the official sportsbook of the Locked On Network. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. There's a game tonight you could also place a wager on. Leafs going up north to play their Ontario foes. The Battle of Ontario ignites once again tonight, so we'll preview that game in a little bit. But we finally got the news that we've been searching for, Dave, on John Klingberg. Surgery it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we were pretty much just waiting for the confirmation. I know that, sometimes things could potentially shift last minute, but yeah, this was almost like a foregone conclusion that surgery was going to happen. It was just a matter of letting the pieces fall into place, and now it is time for the Leafs to move on.
Yeah, I mean, this pretty well means that he's going to be out for the season, and Brad Treliving ended up doing the rounds to the media today and basically said as such, this is a 6-month injury, and even if he does come back or where he's healthy enough where he could skate, you're looking at, the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I doubt he's the type of player that's going to get on a moving train here if they make it to like a cup final or something. So effectively, yeah, that's the end of the John Klingberg era in Toronto. It was short-lived. It was much maligned, but that pretty much will close the book on Klingberg as he remains on LTIR for the rest of the season. Health aside, though, Dave, because obviously from a personal level, it's unfortunate that, Klingberg's career is going to be severely altered by this injury and then by getting surgery, and we'll see if he's able to come back from it. But so if you put the human part aside, how happy do you think Brad Treliving is, though, that he gets kind of a do-over here in trying to find a second pair defenseman?
I wouldn't even say happy would be the word, but I think relief maybe the best way to put it, or just a little less stress to figure out how the heck are you going to deal with, that contract, that cap hit for this year. Plus, you've got a player that's just clearly not playing well, right? So it solves like the biggest problem that was very glaring in the first few months, and he didn't have to deal with assets to get rid of the contract. Because remember we were talking about scenarios that the Leafs were going to get rid of Klingberg. What were they going to have to attach to get rid of the contract? And Brandon Prim's like, how about we look at Robot Island?
Hang on now. Hang on. Let's not go there. This does sound like a legitimate injury.
Yeah, it does.
And I understand that there's going to be haters out there and Leafs people who hate watch the Leafs and hate listen to this podcast, who are going to say, oh, of course, the Maple Leafs always find a way to get their struggling players who are making a lot of money to find themselves out of the game somehow and on Robota Island. Look, it's a two-way street to end up on Robota Island, okay? If John Klingberg wanted to keep playing hockey, trust me, he'd keep playing hockey. It's not a situation where the Leafs can just say, no, go home. Like, this is a two-way street. He very, very clearly needs this surgery, and it's going to take him out for the season. We'll see if he could return somewhere else next year, probably play on a cheap deal to try and rehabilitate his image and his value somewhere potentially, but won't get to do it this year. Now, there seems to be some misconceptions on how much cap space this move actually gives the Maple Leafs, Dave, because I took to Twitter and I said, okay, the news is official. He's going on LTIR. That'll open up, roughly, $4 million. That money is now available for the Leafs to make some moves. Who would you like for the Leafs to acquire, go after? And got a bunch of answers, Tanev, Adam Larson, Nick Seeler was an interesting name that I had actually thought about. Mario Ferraro out in San Jose, who I know Elliot Friedman was chatting about on 32 Thoughts not too long ago as well. So people threw in some names, but then there was also a couple of people who seemed to be confused about, where they sat in terms of the salary cap. Because if you do go to Cap Friendly right now, and he's already on LTIR, Liljegren's already on LTIR, and they only have $1.4 million in cap space. Granted, that's with 23 players, one of which is also Mark Giordano's money because he's only on injured reserve, which still counts toward the cap. So let's do this exercise where we can see exactly how much money, how much they can maximize the cap, I suppose. I do have Cap Friendly open, so I'll see if I can open it up here and share the screen with you and try and do that. Let me see here. Cap Friendly. There we go. Let me know. Is this working?
You got you.
All right. So here's the current roster as it sits right now with the latest news, with the latest that's happened. Obviously, we've got Muzzin, Murray, Klingberg, and Liljegren all on LTIR. You got Mark Giordano on injured reserve, and this is the current roster that's with the team. Martin Jones still with the team due to Ilya Samsonov still being ill and might not play tomorrow. So luckily they do have the cap space so they can call up a third goaltender because they actually have space and they have more than more than enough space to have a third goaltender on the roster. That being said, as you can see, currently they have 1.4 million in cap space. So yes, okay, I understand that Liljegren makes 1.4. So I think a lot of people are doing the math with like, if you put Liljegren back on the roster, boom, there goes all your cap space. You only have 68,000. So how did you get $4 million? How do the Leafs have cap to make a move? Well, first and foremost, if you're putting Liljegren on the roster, you now have 24 guys. So someone has to go down anyways. Let's assume that Marty Jones probably going to get sent down at some point here, and they're not going to carry three goaltenders. So that's an easy one to get up to. We got 900 cap space now. If you wanted, right, if the Maple Leafs wanted to do a move where they needed to get the most cap space they possibly could, you could easily send down Max Lajoie, goes down to the minors. Goodbye, Max Lajoie. Don't think he's even played a game since he's been back. If you wanted to send down one of Lagesson, or who do you think would they send down actually? Between Lagesson and Benoit, is there one that you think you prefer as a third pair guy?
Lagesson, I think.
Okay.
I think he's played better.
All right. So just for purposes of this exercise, they make the same amount of money anyway, so it doesn't really matter all that much. But this is essentially what it would look like. And then let's just send down Bobby McMahon as well, just to show exactly what this would look like. So with a full 20-man roster, you have 3.2 million in cap space. Keep in mind, this is still with Mark Giordano on injured reserve, and that 800,000 because he's on IR, not LTIR, still counts against the cap. So if they bring Mark Giordano back and he's healthy and they toss him into the lineup, that then gives them an opportunity. If they wanted to maximize their cap space, they can send down William Lagesson as well. And now all of a sudden, you've got $4 million in cap space and a full 20-man roster. So that is the math as to how you get $4 million. So that's kind of the limit. You could, if you wanted, send down Connor Timmins and keep up one of those other players if you wanted to keep up. Maybe William Lagesson, who can play on his opposite side. Perhaps that would create another $300,000 or so. Perhaps they send down Ryan Reeves to create a little bit more money. But then also, if you're bringing in a player, that also means that somebody will probably have to go, and you could create that cap space as well. Like if you trade for Chris Tanev, let's say you only give up draft picks, well, you have the opportunity for bringing in Tanev. You could send Connor Timmins down, right? And then you would get that 1.1 million back as well. So there is, a lot of ways. So if you do send down Timmins just for funsies, just to see exactly what they could add, they could add up to 5.1 million if they legitimately go after like a $5 million defenseman, chuck him right here in your top your top four, and all of a sudden you've got a 20-man roster, and you're completely cap compliant and you're good to go. Now, do I think the Leafs are going to add a $5 million defenseman? Probably not. They would probably like to add a couple of pieces to this team, not just one guy. But this is just an exercise to show you how much cap space this move gives the Leafs. Like, they get a lot of space now with this John Klingberg injury. So there is a benefit to this, and it certainly will allow them to make a move here at some point and improve this team immensely.
Yeah, I think just a couple of things there. Actually, I don't know if it was somebody that brought up in the comments or somebody brought it up to me, like Connor Timmins could be involved in any trade, and
For
as
sure.
you just pointed out, like that's over $1 million, right? That you're trading out that you could add in a potential deal.
Yep.
So there was that, and yeah,
like Connor Timmins, great in the preseason. He hasn't really shown me that guy in the games that he's played so far. He's played a handful. I get it, small sample size, but it's like, yeah, I mean, he could be a cap dump, and I don't think it would really hurt the Leafs team.
No, because they didn't really spend big assets to get him in the first place, right? They're not.
No.
So it's not like, you could
He's
easily move.
he's a easily replaceable player too. Like
Yeah, he
Lagesson
is.
can come in and be this team's seventh defenseman, or Simon Benoit.
Yeah, and I think the big part too here is, as you mentioned, the flexibility. Like, we already know Chris Tanev, they're not gonna if they're gonna go for a Chris Tanev, they're probably gonna try to bring that cap hit down in some way, shape, or form to get that flexibility to do multiple moves.
Yeah.
And I've heard a couple of other names potentially. You referenced Ellie Friedman in 32 Thoughts. He brought up, I think him or somebody else brought up Rasmus Ristolainen as a potential guy. That's an expensive ticket.
Yeah, it's 5 sheets, but it's got term, and like maybe they want to add someone with term, because after this year, I think they only have Morgan Riley, and McCabe's got one more year left on his deal. But after that, I don't think they have anyone signed long term.
Exactly. And like Matt Benning was another name that I've heard kind of circulate.
Yeah, I don't know if I want Matt Benning.
I mean,
he's no different than like a Lagesson and a Benoit for me.
And
like
Ethan Bear was another one that was being thrown out there because he doesn't cost you any assets. You literally just have to go out and sign Ethan Bear.
Yeah, free agent who's been recovering from an off-season injury. So that's why he's available. I do want to say Rasmus Ristolainen. He's not the same player he was in Buffalo. He actually had really good underlying numbers last year in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I trust like that one outlier season, or like the previous 4 years in Buffalo where he kind of took a bit of a nosedive in terms of his numbers, or maybe it's the fact that he was finally in a system that worked or a coach that got him going. But Rasmus Ristolainen, if you kind of turn your nose up at that, he's not the same liability that he was in Buffalo. He actually put up a pretty good season last year in terms of defensive play. I will say that. And again, big boy, you can put him in front of the net. He'll cross check. He'll block shots. He'll kill penalties. And that's ultimately what they're looking for, is a guy like that, someone with some physicality.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of teams are interested this time of year, right? That time of year, we know that Brad Treliving values size on that blue line, and that's why I saw Ristolainen's name pop up, and I'm like, this does sound like someone that Brad Treliving would definitely be interested in.
Yeah, probably. I'm just looking it up now. I think he's making 5 or 5.1, I believe is the number.
He has a 20. He's on a 5-year, $25 million deal, and he has 3 years left.
Yeah, so yeah, 3 years after this at 5.1 AAV. So they probably would have to eat some of it, I would think. Whether they're willing to eat money on that for 3 more seasons after this, I'm not sure, but I mean, it's worth a call, right? Worth trying to find out potentially. If you can get Rasmus Ristolainen at like 4 million, I think that's a worthwhile gamble. I would think gives you a top 4 guy. Perhaps it's someone to think about. But yeah, that's definitely the news of the day is John Klingberg will be undergoing surgery and is officially out for the season. And as we just showed you with the math, go watch the YouTube video if it kind of confused you for the audio listeners here, because I did show on the cap friendly how we went through those series of moves to get what could be up to for and as high as maybe like a $5 million that this team could add if they opt to maximize their cap space and roll with a 20-man roster. So it's there's going to be a move made. When that's made, we don't know, but there is definitely going to be a move. And Brad Treliving even said today when he was making the media rounds, they know that defense needs work. They've, he did go out, out of his way to say, hey, it's not an indictment on the players we have. We like what the Lagusons and the Benoits have done, but we do need to improve that group. I think no one's going to argue. Even the guys inside that locker room, I'm sure, would argue that improvements would be welcomed to that team at the very least. All right, Dave. Let's take a break and then let's come back and let's get into tonight's game. Leafs going up to Ottawa, Battle of Ontario going down tonight. So we'll preview that game. We'll give our 3 keys and our locked in players of the night. So we'll do all that when we return. But first, how about a word from our show sponsor?
Yep, today's show is brought to you by Jase Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just for a minute talk about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. It's the holiday season. Maybe you're traveling somewhere to celebrate with family. The last thing you want is to be unprepared to take care of yourself or a loved one if you fall ill. Jase Medical can give you peace of mind before you ever hop on a flight. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illness, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinus infection, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. We are a daily Maple Leaf centric podcast. You can find it wherever you get your pods from. You can also find us up on YouTube. We do have shows coming out every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make sure you're subscribed and get that content directed right to you each and every day. Got a game day tonight. So life after Klingberg begins pretty quickly. Leafs in action for the first time since Saturday. It's been quite the layoff since they've been in action. What are you anticipating tonight? It's the second matchup between these two clubs this season. The first one didn't quite go Toronto's way. They lost 6-3. It was probably Joseph Woll's worst game, maybe of his young pro career. If you recall, that was not a great game. Gave up 6 and had that brutal giveaway too in behind the net.
Oh yeah.
You'd think that this team as a whole, and especially Woll, probably looking for a nice bounce back performance against Ottawa tonight.
Oh, for sure. I mean, this is the type of game that you know, can say a lot about this Leafs team considering they've been off for so long. They've had some time to, rest guys, get back in, get some extra practice in. One of two things is going to happen here. They're going to either play well, or we're going to see a team that has looked like they haven't played in like almost a week, right? It's usually one or the other with this team. And Ottawa, looking at like the last few weeks, like, we know they've had a very disappointing season so far. They were on a 3-game losing streak that was like pretty brutal, right? 5-0 loss to the Panthers. You lose to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Then things kind of turn around for them because they beat the Kraken. And then what worries me about the Senators is they're coming off like they're probably arguably their best game of the season, where they beat the Rangers 6-2.
Yeah, impressive win. It's an impressive win.
Impressive
beat
win at
that
home,
team.
and they are waiting for the Leafs, right?
Yeah.
So,
They are. Is it still considered a new coach bump if it's not a different head coach, but instead a coaching advisor that's added to the staff? Did you see this news that was dropped on Wednesday? So for those who missed it, Jacques Martin, who's a longtime NHL head coach and hasn't been a head coach in years, but formerly a head coach of Ottawa. He was in Montreal for many years. I think he was in Minnesota at one point as well. Longtime NHL coach, very tenured guy. He's won Stanley Cups on benches. I think he recently won. He was on the bench with Pittsburgh back when they won their back-to-back cups in 16-17. Listen to how good this bench is. Mike Sullivan, Jacques Martin, Rick Tocchet.
Yeah.
And Sergei Gonchar was also part of that coaching staff as like a development coach. What a coaching staff that's turned out to be. Anyways, so he gets hired today, Wednesday, to be the senior advisor to the coaching staff. What is that? Like, this is a title I am unfamiliar with. Is this basically just like a babysitter for DJ Smith? Like, what the hell does that even mean?
Well, I'm wondering if this is more so that the front office is kind of in a turning point here after Dorion was let go. I wonder if this is them getting a head coach in there to give them like a real like idea of can DJ Smith actually do this? Because like with Dorion gone, all the sniper rifles are now pointing to DJ Smith, right? Yeah. Like he's probably got the most pressure out of anyone in that Senators organization right now.
That is a piping hot seat.
Yeah.
Piping hot.
And so I wonder if it's a twofold thing. Yeah, it could be, Martin could be there to help Smith. I also just think he's another guy that the ownership can go to and say, is this our guy? Like, do we actually have to eventually pull the trigger and make a coaching change?
So, like, is he like a I don't know how to reference it, but like a plant by ownership to be the ears in the coach's room?
In a way, it's almost like when you're like going on a presidential campaign, you have your campaign manager, but then he brings like a fixer in, and he's like, got to see what this like. How can you improve our situation?
Olivia Pope. Did you watch that show?
Wait, which one?
I can't. What was it called? It was with Kerry Washington. The character is Olivia Pope. Anyways, she's
yeah. I remember which one I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, good show. Can't remember the name of it, but it was a good show.
Scandal.
Anyway, Scandal. Yeah, it was Scandal. Yeah, good show. So kind of like that though, in a way.
Yeah, I think it's just ownership right now doesn't. They're probably while they're dealing with the GM search, because that's still something they want to sort through and figure out. They got someone that can help them on the coaching side a little bit here.
Yeah, I think like when you look at Jacques Martin, he's definitely a coach that is more like of a systems based guy who has relied like he was a coach during like the dead puck era. Like he's a guy who definitely believes in a strong defensive system, and that's been a massive issue for Ottawa for years now is defense. I don't know if anyone told Eugene Melnick, RIP, but it's important to worry about the defense too. If you recall that little jab he gave to Toronto years ago, still having that issue in Ottawa there, Genie, as you know, he's no longer with us. So I'm kind of picking on a dead guy. I'm a terrible human being. But anyways, so I think the hope is he can kind of come in and maybe tweak some of the systems that are there and get them playing better defensively. Yeah, like I don't see this as a situation where they're like transitioning him into a head coach. I don't think that is what this is. Like I saw on Twitter, people kind of putting two and two together with like, oh, this is like Guy Boucher. Now they're putting a coach in place for when they fire the guy that they don't want. I'm like, I don't know if it's the exact same. He's 71 years old, man. Like he's an old dude. Like I think as an advisor is different. I don't even think he's gonna be behind the bench. I think he's just kind of gonna be
Eyes in the sky.
like eyes in the sky kind of thing. Like, is that what Paul McLean was when he was in Toronto? Not quite that title, but
Yeah, but he that's
just
what he
kind
was.
of around.
Yeah, he was like the guy up top that gave like his thoughts on what was happening, right?
Yeah.
Another observation for the coaching staff.
Yeah, just some notes, just like pass some notes along. I think you know Martin will be a little more hands on in Ottawa, but
Mhm.
tonight's going to be kind of the day one, I suppose. That's why I was curious. Like, could you get a new coach bump just by having like an advisory coach added to the staff? Like, does that count? I don't know. I guess we're going to find out tonight when the Leafs go up to Ottawa to play the Senators. When we come back, Dave, let's go through our three keys of the game for the Maple Leafs to come out victorious, and then we'll take a look at the players that we're locked in on for tonight's game as well. So we'll do all that when we return. But first, I want to tell you guys about one of today's show sponsors, and it's our good pals over at FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NHL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you believe the Maple Leafs will be victorious tonight, slap a $5 moneyline wager on them to beat the Senators, and you could get yourself $150 in bonus bets. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options from spreads to player props, over-unders, shot props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NHL season. FanDuel, official partner of the Locked On Network. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. We're hosts here at Locked On Leafs, and we got the Leafs going up to Ottawa, Battle of Ontario, igniting once again tonight for the second time this season. Toronto with a 1-0 series lead already with a 6-3 win earlier on the year, but it's a different Leaf squad, I think, Dave, than the one we saw about a month ago when these two teams last played. Wouldn't you say?
Well, I mean, John Klingberg's not playing, so definitely a much different team. And I think they're riding off of a very confident Joseph Woll right now.
Yep. Yep. And he will start. Samsonov's still kind of ill, not 100%, may or may not be good to back him up. Martin Jones is around just in case. But yeah, Joseph Woll will make his fifth straight start. And again, I think he'll be extra motivated based on how it went last time he played this team, which to me is, I believe, his worst outing as an NHL goaltender. So he'll want to play well for sure. So there'll be some money on the board for Joseph Woll. In terms of what you think the keys are going to be for the Maple Leafs tonight, give me your three keys to victory for Toronto.
I mean, attack this Senators blue line. Like, it still hasn't been like was supposed to be the biggest improvement for the Senators team. I don't think it's actually been that big of an improvement for them.
No Thomas Chabot either. Thomas Chabot out long term.
Chabot has been, he's dealt with a string of injuries this year, but he's a workhorse for them, and they don't have that workhorse. So you got to take advantage of that. And yeah, they're coming off of two very impressive games, but Seattle, we know that's a team that's been struggling. The Rangers one was an impressive win, but they've also lost to teams like Columbus, right? It's a very vulnerable team in my opinion. That and the goaltending hasn't exactly played up to snuff either.
Oh, it's been brutal. Like they gave all that money to Corpusalo, and it's been a sub 900 goaltender. Like he's basically him and Samsonov have both been kind of similar in terms of their numbers so far this season. Yeah, I think for sure you got to attack them. I think they got to generate a lot of high chances tonight. They generate those chances, they should be able to get them to drop, and they've been doing a pretty good job of that. I thought they did well in Boston, and that's a tough team to generate scoring chances on, and they were able to do so. If they do that and work hard, that's another one of my keys. Work hard. You think that this shouldn't be a key? This should just be a given when you're playing professionally in the NHL, but sometimes it's not. But this is a team that does work hard, and that's a big reason as to why they won in the first game. Right? They were heavy on the forecheck. They clogged them up. They gave them zero time and space. I think the Maple Leafs gotta make sure that they do that to Ottawa, right? Give them no time and space themselves, but try and create that on your own side offensively. And you do that by, working hard and keeping your feet moving and skating. I think, too, draw a couple penalties because this is a terrible, terrible PK. 73% kill rates, 28th in the NHL. They've been brutal. So I think if Toronto can get a couple of power plays, should be able to put a couple of power play goals up on the board as well.
No, definitely. And I think the Leafs have to be very disciplined as well, right? They not just disciplined in terms of staying out of the box, but disciplined in their own zone, right? Claude Giroux, I remember like one of the goals he scored, just brutal defensive coverage, leaving him like wide open. Even that Joseph Woll giveaway, I remember like nobody told Joseph Woll a player was just coming from behind him to steal the puck.
This was the game that Klingberg was a dash for.
Yes.
Now that I recall. Yeah.
You know who was also really good in that game for Ottawa? Tim Stützle.
Yeah.
Watch
out for that guy.
Yeah, maybe he's a player that I might be locked in on tonight.
Yeah, maybe. Turnovers, limit turnovers, which goes hand in hand with what you're saying here. Leafs, they've given up the 8th most odd man rush chances this year in the NHL. And a lot of that is because they continue to turn the puck over, right? And then away goes the other team. And Toronto can't get back in time. And it's usually leaving a defenseman out to dry, or it's a breakaway or a 2-on-0, 2-on-1, whatever it may be. And, Joseph Woll's had to come up big a lot of times. But let's not overwork Joseph Woll tonight. It's his 5th straight game. He's never started 5 straight in the NHL before. This is, uncharted territories for him. Now, there's been a lot of time off in between these games. I understand that. So there's, that's good, I suppose, when you have a guy who's playing so much. But still, when he is in the game, let's try and not overwork this guy as much as he's been to this point this year. I do recall listening to Tree Living today on Overdrive, and that was something he noted. He's been very impressed with Joseph Woll this season, and it implores that the defense helps him out a little bit and doesn't make him as busy when he's in goal during the game. So I think tonight definitely should be another night for that. But this is a good team. Like they can score. Right, they don't defend well, obviously, but they can score. They're 6th in the NHL, averaging 3.45 goals per game. So he's going to be busy, but I think Joseph Woll is gonna do his job tonight.
Yeah, I think he's had to deal with a heavy workload. So you just hope that the team buys into making life a little easier, knowing that he's the guy right now going forward and has saved their bacon on numerous occasions, and eventually he's got to earn. You got to give him a steak dinner to thank for everything. If you're not going to give him a steak dinner, give him a good defensive performance in front of him.
Yeah, or both, perhaps. He deserves it.
I think so.
All right, who we locked in on tonight? Leafs versus Sens, always a good game, rivalry matchup. Who we locked in on each side?
Oh, man, you got to go with Matthews. Auston Matthews loves playing in Ottawa. And, that last game, I hope that, he can continue that momentum, because like it was just sorely needed to see him have an impact on a game like that, like he did against Boston. And I just hope that's going to be the case, because you know, they don't go anywhere if their best players aren't their best players. That's been the ongoing theme for this team. And against Ottawa, he's got 44 points in 30 career games against this team. He likes playing against this Ottawa team. I don't know what the record is, how it is in Ottawa, but I'm pretty sure he has a really good track record when he's in Ottawa.
What happened? I refresh my memory. Something about the first night he played in the NHL against the Senators. There was a certain amount of goals that were scored by one Austin Matthews. You remember a tale like this being told?
Oh, did he embarrass some Norris
Wow.
Trophy defenseman and
You're
help?
now you're going. They still lost the game, Dave. You can't use the term embarrassed.
Well, he
They
embarrassed
lost.
Erik Karlsson. He might not have embarrassed the team itself.
Well, I'm sure Erik Karlsson will trade in getting embarrassed by a kid for the 2 points that night.
But yeah, I mean, the four goal night, I'll never forget that night. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah, I remember
just
too. I remember being excited for 2. I was like, oh, 2 goals, wow! Then a third hat trick, and then boom, hits 4, and it's like, oh my god, this guy is gonna be something. A few years later, wins an MVP, wins the Rocket, and oh, we're still waiting for that guy to return, I guess you could say. But I think the last game he played against Boston, you started to see that guy come back into the fold a little bit. But need to see the consistency from him now, right? Matthews, he's shown this season like a couple of games here where he'll go on a goal scoring tear. He'll have a hat trick. He'll be a beast. He'll go silent for 2, 3, 4 games or 5 games like he did just now before this goal, and then boom, goes a 2-goal outing and looked dominant. So need to see the consistency though, and I think maybe a good follow up to Saturday is a good step for that. I'm with you also when it comes to Tim Stützle, but I'll throw out another name for you. How about Vladimir Tarasenko? Had maybe his best game as an Ottawa Senator in that win over the
Rangers,
New York Rangers. Yeah,
his former club.
Yeah, team that traded for him, then opted to not re-sign him in the offseason. So maybe a little bit of a revenge narrative. He had 2 goals, 3-point outing, his first 3-point outing as an Ottawa Senator. So we'll see, what he can do as a follow-up tonight against the Maple Leafs. So those are the 2 players that we're locked in on. We're both locked in on Austin Matthews. Keep an eye on Tim Stützle on Ottawa, and keep an eye on Vladdy Tarasenko as well. Couple of guys who know how to put the puck in the back of the net. Hopefully Joe Woll will be able to stop him tonight. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on X at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and comment down below if you're here on YouTube. And we'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. We'll break down the game between the Leafs and Sens. It's a 7 or 7:30 puck drop tonight. I can't recall. Apparently it's a super panel on TSN, by the way, a combination of the Leafs and the Sens panels colliding for like a joint halftime or joint intermission panel, and then they have their separate play.
It is a 7:00 puck drop, or
7:00.
Not 7:00 puck drop, because we know puck doesn't drop at 7.
Yeah, like 7:08, whatever. But 7:00 start is what it is tonight. So back with another episode for y'all tomorrow after that one. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.